Okay, so this is a totally stock Empire Resurrection frame, and I have this set up on a test gun here. Trigger shoe removed, just so that I can test the trigger pull. It does have a hammer and a spring in it, just in from flush at the back, just because that's important in working out how heavy the trigger pull is going to be. So we have a Wheeler test gauge here. Try and set it up so that you can see what's going to happen. I can't show it all at the same time. So the test gauge goes on the trigger like so. Then you just pull it straight back. So that trigger pull is 2 pounds and 8 ounces. Cock the hammer on the gun again. £2 10 ounces. £2 13 ounces. £2 11 ounces. Oh. £2 13.6 ounces. So we're averaging just under £2 11 ounces for the trigger pull with a completely stock trigger frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart. I'll show you how to do that, and I'm going to install one of our Delrin SAS trigger plates, the short and snappy one, with our light medium sear spring and our medium length trigger return spring and spring guide, and we'll see what difference that makes. So to start with, I have to remove the frame. Take the safety out of the frame. Safety ball bearing and detent, put them out of the way. Then remove the sear. And the old sear spring, put that to the side. Take out the shoulder bolts that are holding the trigger plate in place. Okay. And take out the old trigger plate, take out the old trigger return spring. Okay, so put it back together. We're going to take our trigger return spring with the spring guide, make sure that the little pip from the injection molding is facing up. Actually, before we do that, in here, under the sear spring, there is a little rubber tit. Let me see if I can show you that better on the close-up camera. It's in here, and we're going to want to remove that. We do that by pushing an Allen key into the small hole under the frame. It'll be pretty stiff. You're going to push it up with the short end, then with the long end, and out it drops. And just put that aside. You are not going to want that again. Okay, so back to our frame. So we're going to take our trigger return spring with the pip pointing up, put it into the slot in the frame, and you're going to push that all the way down and all the way back in the slot so that it is correctly located, and that will stop the rear of the spring sliding up in the slot, which can stop the trigger returning. It's a real important piece to improve the trigger pull on the Resurrection. we're going to take the short and snappy trigger plate. That's the one with the change in angle on the activation ramp. Just drop that in. It'll be on top of the spring to start with. So we have to get an Allen key in here, compress the spring a little bit, which will allow the trigger plate to drop down. And then once the trigger plate drops down, we're going to put shoulder bolts back in. First one, and then the second one. Okay, and just check that. Oh wow, difference already is huge. Just check that that's moving smoothly, and this Darwin plate is just gliding beautifully in that frame. Then we're going to take our light medium spring. If you buy our whole spring set, it's going to be the one where it has 9 coils. If you count it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But the first and last one doesn't count. So that's 9 coils. It drops into the spring, Sear spring location. Roller sear, make sure the bearing's working correctly. Drops in. Put it too far forward. And you put that shoulder bolt through. Tighten it. And in the interest of trying to show you as much as possible in the shortest time as possible, I'm not going to bother doing the safety, but obviously we have a video for how to install the safety, and you should put that back in before you use your gun. I'm going to put this back on the body. Tighten up the screws. Okay. Gotta adjust the timing slightly because we put a different trigger plate in it. So just need to bring that hammer lug up a little bit. Make sure that the hammer is being released at the beginning of the pull. It needs to come up a little bit more. And just a little bit more. Okay, that's a good release point. You want the hammer to release just as the three-way rod, the timing rod is going to start moving, so at the very beginning of the pull. So that's good. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to grab my trigger pull tester, reset it, cock the gun. £1 1 ounce, that seems very light. It is £1 8 ounces. It's significantly lighter than the stock trigger. So just over £1. Just under £1. Just £1 5 ounces. So we're averaging £1 3 ounces. Okay, so you can see that the trigger pull is much lighter. It is far smoother, and you'll be able to make the trigger pull shorter now because of the shorter timing rod slot and because of the design of the trigger plate. Now I'm going to swap it over and we're going to try it with our NOS trigger plate. I'll stop the video and catch up once I've redone that. Okay, so I now have our NOS trigger plate, our medium return spring, and our light medium sear spring. Now with this trigger plate, the trigger pull is going to move further before the hammer releases. So it's going to go about half to third of the trigger pull before the hammer releases. That's because it has a really light, smooth ramp to it. So it's a very light trigger pull release. So this is much not light or even nicer than the old school light, smooth trigger pulls. All right, and so then we'll check out trigger pull weight on this and get it lined up. Drop the gun first. 1 pound 3 ounces. $11 ounces. $13.8 ounces. 9.2 ounces. 9.3 ounces. 8.1 ounces. 7.6 ounces, we're going down. 8.2 ounces. 8.9 ounces. 9 ounces. So 10 shots. Our trigger pull weight has averaged 10 ounces. Which is super light, super smooth. A little bit longer trigger pull than the short and snappy trigger. But very, very light. Okay, for comparison, I put one of our hinge frames on here, and we're going to measure the trigger pull on the hinge frame. Now you can pull the hinge frame anywhere from the top to the bottom, and obviously the trigger pull will be lighter at the bottom. So, but that's typically where most people shoot them. They shoot them like this. So, but you can put it anyway. But just for comparison, we'll measure it at the bottom, which is where it can, which is pretty much as light as it's going to be able to be. So we'll put the trigger gauge on there. 2.9 ounces. 1.4 ounces. That one didn't even register. $2.2 ounces. 1.1 ounces. It is so light that the gauge is actually having trouble measuring it. 2 ounces. The stock trigger pull on an Empire Resurrection was about 2 pounds 10 ounces on average. It didn't register. I think 0.2 is the 2.8 ounces. Didn't register. Didn't register. 3.1 ounces. 1 ounce. It's having trouble because it's right at the bottom range of the gauge to even register. 8 shot average is 1.9 ounces. Let's go for a 10 shot average. Didn't register. If we counted all the didn't registers, we'd be even lower. So we're at 1.6 ounce average. And this hinge frame is actually set up with a screw in the middle location. So it could be lighter if you put it at the top location, but we actually recommend the middle location. That's the trigger pull. Super light. And averaging 1.6 ounces for 10 shots. There is no hinge frame, there is no autococker frame, a mechanical autococker that even comes close to that.